thank you, Beverly, for allowing me this opportunity. You definitely have caused me to step out of my comfort zone, but I'm learning that in order to grow in life, I have to constantly be willing to step out of my comfort zone. So I'll just be learning along with you ladies today. I'm going to share some things that we have learned through this wonderful book, and I really appreciate Beverly being willing to make these slides for me this week, because with all the classes I have going on, she took on that task. I don't know how I believe, I haven't met you yet, Beverly, but you may have octopus arms, as many things as you do. Okay, so let's get into, we're going to probably just cover part 2. We're not going to be able to do the entire section. Once we looked, it got a little bit deeper than we thought. So we're going to focus on part 2, chapters 3 and 4. So we're going to start with chapter 3 today, and let's see if I can.
And this went 3, 4, and 5. That was my mistake. This is actually just 3 and 4.
Yes, so we're going to start with 3, and that chapter is How Can I Become Disciplined? And so the thing about this that I love the very first sentence, because when you think of the word leadership, or you look at that title that says Leadership 101, you know, the thought that comes to mind, it's like, I'm not a leader, but that's just like people saying that I'm not organized. I may not be born organized, but I can learn to be organized. And I may not think I'm a leader, but I can learn to be a leader. And the first person that we have to work on leading is ourselves. And so this first slide that we're going to talk about on how to become a leader, there was a quote in here that says, no matter how gifted a leader is, his gifts will never reach their maximum potential without the application of self-discipline. So we definitely want to put the praise and the thankfulness to the Lord for our God-giving talents, but those talents won't do any good if we're not willing to do our part and be self-disciplined and put the work forward in order to do these. So one of the things that I love from another mentor that I have read his book in the past is a quote from Jordan Adler that says, never quit on a bad day. So in order to be self-disciplined, we've got to be willing to say we're not going to quit. And the time that we want to quit most times is on a really bad day, but we just need to agree that we're not going to quit, and we're definitely not going to quit on a bad day. I think that in this discipline direction, one of the things that I think happens to a lot of people, and that I've got to make sure that I caution myself about, is not only not to quit, but not to make excuses, and not to let negative thoughts come in and paralyze what it is that I'm trying to do. We've got to work. We've got to put forth the effort and the self-discipline and not the excuses. Because if we start making excuses, then all of a sudden we're using some of this time we're getting ready to talk about in a few minutes, the 80-20 rule. We will be wasting precious time. I think this is just a character trait that we each need to put on our prayer list for the Lord to grow, is self-discipline. We don't need to make excuses. We don't need to quit. And any time that we start concentrating on the difficulties instead of the results is when we'll see that that's starting to slip in. So that's a really good key and way to know if that's getting ready to happen, is if you catch yourself constantly focusing and thinking about how hard this portion is or how hard that was today, just stop that, and we need to focus on those. It's not about how difficult, it's about the results. It's about that, yes, this is going to be a difficult week doing this many classes, back to back, but instead of focusing on the fact that it's hard to get it all in 1 week, I have to focus on the fact that that's the way I planned my calendar, and instead at least be thankful for that I have those classes and focus on the results. The results of those classes, Lord willing, will be silver by the end of the week. And so that totally changes my focus. I'm definitely not, when I'm thinking about silver, the difficulties do not seem to take over. We need to make sure that we check and make sure that the rewards match the work. We don't want to reward ourselves until the job is done. And I don't know if y'all noticed in the book on page 28, it was a really cute story of a family going on a camping trip and how the dad had chose to make the reward meet the results. And so once they got there and they finished, they got to the location, everyone in the family jumped out One was getting off the, the backpacks and the ice chest. Other ones were unpacking and putting the tent up. And an elderly couple made a comment to this family, said, "Wow, you all really work together." And the dad's comment back was, "No one gets to go to the bathroom until the camp's set up." So we just need to make sure that we do set up rewards for ourselves, but that we reward ourselves once those jobs are done. And then we want to make sure that we stay focused. So staying focused, I think, is one of the challenges of being in a home business, is because everything else can distract us, everything else can get into the way. So if you know that you have talent and you've seen a lot of motion but little concrete results, then that's a key that you do lack self-discipline. And so we want to make sure that we start building this character in ourselves. Check on your calendar, check on your results, and see that you are disciplining yourself in this home business, that you are treating it like a business, and that you are taking the time to fill up the calendar, to sit down and work the business. And so we're going to spend probably the most of the rest of the time in this class talking about how we do that with our time and with this next principle. This is a principle that Beverly challenges those of us on her team with quite often, and it can go so many different ways. But on how we should prioritize our business, she breaks it down into the 80-20 rule a lot. And Beverly, as I'm speaking about this, if you think of something that makes sense with what I'm saying in the 80-20, be sure to go ahead and just jump in and say, "Oh, and we do this, we do this and we do this," because there's so many ways to apply the 20 and 80 principle. But the first one we're going to talk about is 20% of your team will do 80% of your volume. So Beverly teaches us to make sure that we are focusing on those people. Find out, look down in your downline, and you're going to see who those 20% are. If you're just getting started, then they've not shown up yet. And so don't get discouraged and don't think about, like we talked about a minute ago, the difficulties, but the results. They will come. Those people show up. I am amazed. They just show up. They show up right on time, and then you will notice they start working. But if you look at the calculations, it will be 20% of your team doing 80% of the work. So you've got to take and focus your time, 80% of your time, on those 20%. So organize or agonize. It's not how hard you work, but it's how smart you work. And I got tickled at my mother. This was one of the things that she said. She says, it's really 80% discipline and 20% knowledge. So I think in this particular business, sometimes people, especially new business builders, let this paralyze them. And they say, "Oh, I don't know enough. I can't answer all of their questions. I don't know all of the products." Neither do I, because I don't have all of those symptoms and I've not had some of these issues. But what's interesting is just share what you do know. Keep it simple and keep the process simple. Enjoy sharing the things that you do know, and discipline yourself to continue sharing those things 80% of the time. And 20% of that knowledge will start increasing, and it will start growing. And with just doing what you know, you will start getting more and more knowledge. Okay, so leaders and followers. Here's a really good chart that was in the book. I don't know if you ladies saw this, but leaders initiate, but followers react. Here's one of our 80% of the time what we should be doing. Leaders pick up the phone and make contacts, but followers listen and wait for the phone to ring. So you're seeing the difference here. Do you see the action versus the reaction? Leaders spend time planning and anticipate problems, but followers spend time living day-to-day just reacting to the problems. We don't want the problems to consume us or take over our life. We want to be able to just prepare for problems, anticipate them, take care of them, and move on. Another lady that I love as a mentor, she says, instead of dwelling on it, she says, give yourself permission for 5 seconds. stop, dwell on the mistake, dwell on the problem, and then pick yourself up and go deal with it. And so my girls remind me of that often. They're like, okay, Mama, you have 5 minutes to dwell on that, or 5 seconds to dwell on that, and then move on. So invest time in people. That's what leaders do. But followers spend time with people. You will never regret investing time with people because it comes back to you full. It comes back to you 100%, not just 80. Leaders fill the calendar by priorities, and then followers fill the calendar by request. So I really like this chart because I think it does a good job of just helping us to see if we're asking or saying to ourselves, I'm not a leader. I don't know what a leader does. Here's a really good checklist to see what a leader does and to help you start working the character trait of self-discipline into your life and into my life. So 80%, I'm going to come back to this chart in just a second. Let me see, right here. I missed the chart there's a chart in here, a slide in here, Beverly, that I really liked. Hold on just a second. Okay. We'll just start here, and I'll find it in just a second. So prioritize assignments. I think this is a challenge for everybody because we think everything is important. Here's the chart. I think I see it. We cannot overestimate the unimportance of almost everything. It's so easy to think everything is high priority. Everything is high urgency. But in reality, we just need to make sure that we learn where to put them in perspective to what's going on and what we're wanting to accomplish. In our Young Living business, we've got to make sure that we can dedicate time to it. Is it highest urgency in our everyday life issues? No, it isn't. But it can't be low urgency either. So we're going to move on, and you can just look at this chart. This exact same chart is in your book, and it's going to be on page 34. So it's not hard to work, and it's not how you work. It's how smart you work. So make sure that you take time to focus on this as you're building your character and you're looking at your last week's activities and see what you're putting as high importance and high urgencies. So evaluate opportunities. And so as we're looking at our high priorities, what is required of me? What gives me the greatest return? And what is rewarding? These are the 3 R's: requirements, return, and reward. So what is required of me? You know, my first priority in my home is I'm a wife and a mother, and that does take a lot of my time. It doesn't take all day, but it does take a huge portion of my time, and I love that portion, and I'm not going to let anything take place there. I know when Beverly teaches us to fill up our calendar, she says, okay, go through and put across your calendar for this week every appointment that is necessary, what cannot be removed, what is high importances. And then go and fill in those places, you know, the things that's going to happen every week that you know that you've got going on. But when you fill all that in, you'll see little spots throughout your calendar, and those are the spots that you've got to start looking at and change in your calendar to where they become high priority for your business. So again, we cannot overestimate the unimportance of almost everything. Priority principles. Okay, so if you go into the book there on page 37, the next section is priority principles. And what I liked about this section is the reminder that the petty and the mundane steal much of our time. Too many people are living on wrong things, living for the wrong things. Evaluate every month by reviewing those 3 R's. Requirements, return, and reward. So every month review those 3 and eliminate. Ask yourself, what am I doing that can be done by someone else? I think this is a trap that especially those of us as moms sometimes have a hard time with. We have a hard time delegating because we just say, it's just quicker for me to do it myself. But a lot of times, especially as a mom, I know that if I would go ahead and delegate that task, then that will free up some time for me to put into my business or into something more important than what it is I'm working on. And at the same time, it's building character in my children, to where they are seeing that their place in our home is important and that there is priorities for them as well. So you need to distinguish what you have to do and what you can delegate to someone else. What are the top projects that you are doing this month, and how long will they take? This is a really good way to organize how much time. We don't want to, under schedule the amount of time and run out of time on the project, but we want to make sure that we put enough time to those projects in the calendar. The good is the enemy of the best. So this quote I really enjoyed, because it's real easy for us as people to say, oh, I am pretty good at making decisions. This is right, but that's wrong, so I need to go this direction because this is the right decision. But where we run into a challenge is that most people can prioritize when faced with right and wrong issues. But the challenges arise when we're faced with two good issues, two good choices. When there's two good choices, that's when we run into a challenge and have to ask ourselves, okay, neither one of these things that I'm choosing to do are wrong. Should I choose to sit here maybe for a few minutes and study my essential oils desk reference and learn about a few more oils? That's a good choice. But is that a money-making choice? Is there someone that's still waiting for my follow-up? Is there someone that's still needing a call from me that I need to take care of first before I do this? Can I do the essential oils desk reference study tonight once everyone's calmed down and it's too late to make phone calls, or in the morning when it's too early, and make a better choice right now of spending my time on money-making activities? I think this is where I want to learn to lead my team, is I've got to learn how to prioritize the good choices and make sure that I'm making the right one. So efficiency is the foundation for survival. Have a well-trained team. Give assignments to train them. This is something that me and Beverly were talking about early this week. I think sometimes in our 80-20%, we were working on the 20% of the people that's doing 80% of the work, and we get this new business builder, and maybe she's just not jumping on board really quick, and she's just not seeming to do anything, and you're like, oh, I thought she was going to be a business builder, and she's not. I think we've got to be careful not to give up on people too quickly. I remember when I first called and discussed this with Beverly, is this a business for me, and how do you do this business? Immediately, she gave me some assignments. I want you to fill out this form. I want you to read this, and I want you to go look at this webinar. I think it's important that to train your team, you give them an assignment. You tell them, today you'll be teaching the first half of this class. For those of you that are learning about our way of building the business as a team, Beverly was talking about how she teaches a class for the person, and then that next class they go in and they teach half and half. Well, that new person doesn't know what half and half means, so you assign exactly what you want that person to do and what their portion of the class is going to be, whether it's, okay, you're going to fill out the order forms and here's the way it works, or, whatever portion of the class that you're going to give them that they're going to feel comfortable with. So don't give up on those new people too quickly, but just make sure that we do assign a few assignments to them so that they know what to do next. And then you may see that you truly have an amazing business builder that just needed a nudge and a little bit of confidence to know that she could lead, or that he could lead. So train your team to a system. Be sure to listen to them as they learn. Don't listen to them to respond, but listen to them to see what their needs are so that you will know how to respond and with what material to respond. Put in the time up front, and you'll have a stronger and more stable organization. I believe that that Beverly's definitely experiencing this, I hope, with me. I remember when she first started, I had lots and lots and lots and lots of questions. And I remember saying, just bear with me. I'll get this. And once I get it, I don't mind going on my own. And now I'm seeing the exact same thing happen. I have this new business builder, and she calls, and we talk, just over and over and over, day after day, and then it's like, oh, she's quit calling me. Does she not need me anymore? Well, that's not a bad thing. If she's only calling me every now and then with a question, then that's a good thing, because if you'll put that time in up front and spend lots of time training and encouraging and giving them assignments to do and answering the questions, then you're going to have a stronger, more stable organization. So, do you have, Beverly, I heard noise in the background. Did you have a comment there?
Oh, sorry, I was just turning my phone off of mute, actually. I think on this resource page, my YouTube channel is up there because I am getting a lot of people asking, hey, Bev, how do we listen to the recordings? And so I do just want to say, the link to my YouTube channel is very complicated. It's not like, hey, go to youtube.com/Beverly, and then you'll find me. So, but if you go to YouTube and you search for Beverly Banks channel, it's still me that will pop up there. I might be a couple of down, but you'll see my channel and you can subscribe. So I do, though, just want to add on to the Pareto principle is what they talked about in the book. And I've used this a lot in my life and also a lot in my organization because it's a really good tool for prioritization. And I read about it in a business book on efficiency called The 4-Hour Work Week. If you guys haven't read that, that's a fantastic book. But essentially, what you're going to do is if you are a leader and you have a pretty big organization, you have got to do, it's almost backwards, but the 20-80 rule, where in our organizations, and even if you don't have a gigantic organization, pretty soon what you're going to figure out is only 20% of the people who are signed up in your team will give you 80% of your volume. And so those are people that when your time is starting to be limited, you want to make sure that you are really sewing into that 20% really well. As your organization grows and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and all of a sudden 20% of your people, equals 5,000 people or something like that, you want to make sure that you're training your downline team to the same principle so that you know that all of those people are really getting attended to. Also, on those 20% of your people, that's where you should be spending 80% of your time and 80% of your funds. If you set aside funds every single month to invest back into your business, which I highly recommend that you do, I recommend that you give 10% and you invest 10%. So when you get your Young Living paycheck in the mail, and when I get my Young Living paycheck in the mail, my first 10% I give, my second 10% I invest. And I will take it and I will invest it back into my business by doing some marketing or by sending out gifts or, by doing something that's going to invest back and sow back into my team. So make sure that you are investing back into your team, but also that especially with the 20%, if not everybody, that you're celebrating their accomplishments. And that every time they make a rank, you're there and you're happy for them and you're making sure that they know that. And that as a team, you are all making these ranks together. I can't get to gold without Missy getting to silver. And so when I get to gold, it's kind of like, I don't feel like this is just my rank. It's like the rank for our team because all of us have to work together in order to get there. It's difficult for Missy to make silver and 6 without Donna making executive every single month. So we all have people on our team. We're all growing together. And spend time with your team in celebrating some of that. And it also just gets a really nice feeling to your team because all of a sudden, you kind of have this party going on where you're all like celebrating with each other and you're all really looking forward to your rank advancements. And you're all just excited and growing together. Absolutely. So I'm going to unmute the line, and I'm just going to see, I know that we have some product questions that have popped up, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the line for people to make comments either about the presentation or about the book, then I'll stop the recording and then we'll get to the product questions that I've seen pop up because it just doesn't really, pertain directly to the training. So, so let me unmute the line.
You are now unmuted.
Okay. So, so does anybody have anything that they want to add? No? Okay, I'm not going to pick on anybody this time. I picked on people last time. So, okay, everybody. Well,
you are now
muted.
Thank you
all for coming to this leadership training. We actually doubled in size from the call that we had last week to the call that we are doing now. Yes, we actually doubled our size. So that's amazing. So take a look. You should be able to sign up for the entire series using the link that you are receiving. If not, just go ahead and look in your inbox for that.